Hey, mamas. Welcome to the second episode of Dear Football Moms. I'm Alvie. I'm Rule.
And I'm Regine Hill, and we are your hostess with the mostest, your mentors and your fellow warriors in this wild world, aka the Wild Wild West of football and being a football mom.
Yes, today's episode is a big one. We're talking about the pressures of college recruitment and scholarships, right? This is a topic that keeps a lot of us up at night, especially when your son is starting to get serious about playing football. On the next level, it gets real out here.
Yes, exactly. And whether you're new to the recruiting process or you're just in the thick of it, sis, today we're breaking it all down just for you. From timelines to eligibility to understanding scholarships and how you can support your athlete without adding more pressures.
Yeah, so we're going to first get into understanding the recruitment process and what that really looks like. So let's just start with the basics, right? What is college recruitment and what is that process and what does that look like? So think of it like a job interview that spreads over a couple years, pretty much. There's three major contact periods that we want to dive into today. So the first one is late fall, early winter contact period, right? So that's late November to early December, and it leads up to early signing period. So this is usually like mid-December. Like in 2024, it was like December 4th through the 6th. And so what happens during this time? Coaches can visit high schools, evaluate players, they can talk to athletes and families, usually at school or events, make phone calls, and continue recruiting conversations, right? This is a very active period. So coaches are trying to like lock in commitments before that early signing period. Why does this matter to moms? Well, if you have a child that's being recruited and this is basically like crunch time. And so colleges are trying to like finalize their decisions before early signing day. So you can expect like that increased communication around this time. It's almost like dating. Like if you're seeing a lot of communication, a lot of visits, like a lot of, communication, then that means that there are a lot of interest. If you don't hear a lot, just like somebody else, if you don't hear from somebody a lot, then typically that means they're not really interested, right, Regine? And so that's kind of how.
So yeah, so during this period, a lot of the times the coaches are texting you. You get most of your communication from text, and then you may see them at some games, some events at your school where you could be able to communicate with them and your parents.
Yep. And so the second period is late winter, early spring contact, right? And so this is typically early January through the end of February. It kind of leads up to National Signing Day, right? And so usually it kind of falls on that first Wednesday in February, but again, it just depends. And so what happens during this time? Coaches can go off campus to meet with recruits and their family in person. Okay. This is like all fancy mancy in some cases, right? This one show off their cooking skills for those that can cook, right?
Yes.
Or visit your favorite bakery or place to get some food for the house because they're gonna come over and Regina will tell you what coaches like to do.
They like to eat, honey. Okay.
So yeah, you can also expect to see coaches at games, practices, events, right, to watch the athletes perform. More personal evaluations and final recruitment pushes are happening around that time for guys that have, may not have been signed and things of that nature. Why is this important for moms, right? So this is that final chance for coaches to secure that athlete that they really, really want before a national signing day. So again, this is the heavy, heavy push, right? So if your child didn't sign during that early period, then this is their window right here to be seen and to be courted by that coach.
Yes, as they say, that was the last call for alcohol. So the coaches are out there. They're out there. They're pushing. They're wanting your son to be at their institution.
So 3 is spring contact period, right? So this is like mid to late spring, right? Usually April through mid May. And what happens during this time is colleges, coaches are sending these coaches on the road. They're visiting high schools, right? Like right around now. And they are, meeting with counselors and they're talking to the athletes, and often they're attending spring practices. They're at camps, right now it's like camp season, showcases, right? Evaluating very, very high. It's very, very important around that time because these evaluations mean everything. And so they're not just looking at the players' athleticism at this point, they're also looking at academics. They're trying to make sure that they're going to be eligible and they're also checking out character. So this is important to moms because this is very, very important for juniors and underclassmen. Coaches can really get their eyes on the players to start planning for their future classes. And Regina and I know this, and maybe you do, but most colleges have what we call war rooms, where they're going inside these rooms and you'll have all these lists of these kids that they're interested in for years on years on years on down. So they start early with who they're interested in. So understand this is the time that is very, very crucial for underclassmen, given the fact that it's very, very hard for high school student athletes to even get scholarships nowadays, with the portal being such a big role in college recruitment. And so it's also a good time to ensure your athlete stays on track academically and athletically.
Yes. And during these times, college coaches can call, text, DM, like AB said, visit your school or even come to the house. So make sure those plates are on the table. But it is the green light for all communication. Again, for those in the back, green light for all communication. But don't wait on them. Make sure that you are ahead of the game because there is plenty for you to do.
Absolutely. And the biggest thing is for you to do as a mom is start early. You know, the game again is so different from when I first started mentoring sports moms. And now as an advisor, I recommend, starting really freshman year if you have a high value student athlete that's coming out the gate, because, there are a few that even in middle school, 8th grade, they're getting offers, right? Then you really want to start freshman year. But nevertheless, sophomore year and junior year, like, it's a non-negotiable at this point. And so here's how you can do that. One, keep those grades up. Do not wait until their junior year or senior year, like we often get where parents are calling me for me to do a transcript audit and trying to figure out how to get this kid eligible. No, you want to start early so that is not the main focus at the tail end of his recruiting process. So the GPA is just as important as his stats, or as good as he is, because at the end of the day, if your child wants to play on the next level, they have to qualify academically. Colleges don't just recruit athletes, they are recruiting students who can stay eligible and also graduate. You got to think about it this way. The coaches does not control the university. They work for the university. So at the end of the day, the student still has to be eligible to be able to attend that university. And I don't know about you, but every college has a requirement for students to enter into their university. So think of it that way. So track their core GPA, not just their overall GPA, because the core is what the NCAA cares about. The overall is what the high school cares about to graduate. So there's two different criterias that they have to accomplish when you're looking at their GPAs, right? And then you have to know the NCAA minimum requirements, right? Like that's a must. And then you have to understand the role that the ACT and SAT play in that piece. Because I always tell people, if the grades don't make it, the school won't take them. Anything you want to add to that, Regina?
Bars, honey. Yes, I will also inquire and talk to the university about if they accept ACT and SAT. I know some universities don't after COVID, but I know some universities brought back that rule that they require ACT and SAT. So make sure that you try your best and you work hard. And if you need a recommendation, I prefer the ACT because you can guess on there and not get penalized for it.
Yep. The second thing is set realistic goals, right? Again, not these big, bold, unrealistic goals, and we're not being a negative Nancy. It's just you have to set realistic goals based off of your child. Like, where does your child want to go? What kind of school, he wants to attend, the team, the environment, the climate. People don't understand how that plays a role in their son being successful at a school. And even the food, what type of food do they have? Like, I had an incident years ago when I was mentoring, and I had a student athlete, and he wanted to go to this, far, far away from home. He was from New Orleans. And I was like, you might really want to consider the food there. I understand they're telling you all this stuff, but the food is not great there. And you have to gain weight. It may be a struggle. Long story short, He didn't think it was going to be a big deal. Well, the food's so nasty, he ended up losing 20 pounds. So now he can't play because he's underweight. And so people think small things like that doesn't matter. No, it definitely matters. When they say that the devil is in the details, that's the reality. Like, you have to know the meat and cranny of your son and what they're walking into. Academics, how far they are from home. Are they going to be homesick? What's the campus culture like? What looks like for post football programs and plans. Can they find a job in that state if they stay there? These are the type of things that you have to think about when you're making these decisions. So I always tell people, like, write the vision down. Academic goals, also athletic goals, and then character goals, because we don't talk about character enough. Character plays a huge role in today's world, and then helping them stay on track. What you got for that, Regine? I know you see that a lot.
Goals are really, really important. It helps those individuals, like your career center individuals, that's going to help your son throughout all 4 years if he decides to stay at that institution, hone in and get those internships, those shadowing opportunities, those externships, to be able to do some job placement for your athlete.
Yeah, and that's like super, super important. The other thing is understanding coaching styles and cultures. Like, we don't pay attention to that enough. Like, not every coach will be fit for your child's personality or his purpose. Some are strict, some are intense, others are more supportive and more developmental. You have to know your child. Like, I had a student, again, we always use examples because we've been doing this for so long. We have so many case studies that we can talk about. And from where, I told a parent, like, listen, I know this coach, because we know a lot of coaches that has the personality. Your child and this coach, they're probably going to be button heads. So unless your son is about to do a 180 on his personality, I don't see that working out well. Well, lo and behold, again, oh, that's not a big deal. The kid gets there, and this is him and the coach. So now he's not playing because this is what him and coach are doing. So you have to look beyond the logo. You have to look at the coach's reputation. You have to see what type of coaching style, what his personality, how will he handle your son if your son gets in trouble, what is his disciplinary outlook, right? Does your son or can your child thrive under pressure, or does he need affirmations? Do he need more of a supportive coach or somebody who's going to be more tough on him? I always tell people at the end of the day, like, don't just pick the program, pick the people, because that's what you're really picking as well. It's not just the program, it's who's going to be pouring inside of your child, right, Regine?
Right. And, taking it back to church a little bit, the pastor says the people you run with are the people you become. So you want to make sure that the bars. So you want to make sure that you're sending off your son to a program that he's going to be able to be developed into that, what we call an uncommon man, that individual that's going to say, yes, sir, no, sir. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Please. Thank you. My pleasure. I appreciate you. That matters at the long haul.
Yeah, and not to even get like slightly off course, but because I'm a sports agent, it's always in the back of my head. Like, this is when they start going from college to the NFL that really matters, their character. Because once you get to that level, athleticism is not as important because everybody's good, right? Once you get in that pool, now it's like, how do we distinguish between this athleticism? It's character. Right. And so character becomes very, very huge. So you have to begin to do that. So it brings us even to our fourth point, which is consider academics just as much as you do athleticism. Statistics shows, right, that guys that are doing really, really well and graduate from college make more money in the NFL. And so academics play a role. There's data that proves that when these young men are academically focused and sound, that they are more successful in the next level. So that's important for you to understand. And so what happens is your child, if they get injured or if their dreams change, what then? If you focus strictly on that football piece, now you have a child who's lost. And we see a lot of young men like that, and not just young men, adults. We have guys that come out of the league that come to us who don't have a good relationship with their former sports agent, that are looking for help with resumes. They're looking for helps with how to find a job or what to do next because they feel like the world has just tossed them to the side. We don't want that to be your child. So when you're you're choosing a school, make sure that you're choosing a school that can develop both the athlete and the man, the athlete and the person, like Regine said, because we want to build those uncommon guys. We want to have men of stature, right? And, and believe in who they are, but also what they have to offer to the world, that people can look at them and say, man, you know what? That's a great kid. That's a great young man. That's a great person. So make sure that you're researching majors, right, and internships, and graduation rates, and encouraging your child to think beyond football, because we get tired of, I'm being honest, and this is me being true, we get tired of getting young men who, once they're done, they are so lost and dejected and just feel like they don't know if they're coming or going, when you had all of these years to develop them. So us as a community, we're not just going to put this on one mom, one school, whatever. We're going to say, as a community, we have to do better and figuring out how to help these young men figure out what life looks like after football. Because when you think about it, right, Regine, you have less than 2% that goes to the next level. So we have 98% of student athletes that are going to be professionals at something else. So at some point, we have to put more focus on that, right? Or at least a good, healthy balance to make sure that they're successful when they're done with football.
So, Mama, think about it like this: football is the icing on the cake. So, make sure you do your research, visit these schools, attend these college ran camps. And they're particularly during this time in June. And I say attend these camps just because, again, your son can practice and hone on his skills, but it is a time for you to ask those questions, to observe the coaching staff, to be able to see what type of coaching style this coach has at this university. But also remember, this is your child's future, and we want to make sure that he's placed in the right hands.
Absolutely. And so a part of this journey, because we don't have time to really harp even more on this again, like we always stretch or starting to push more, because we do a lot of classes, but we haven't really been doing them publicly a lot, because we like word of mouth, right? We like to know that people are serious about this. And so we want to jump right now into our official visits and unofficial visits. What does that look like? And so a lot of families are still confused about the difference between the two. So we're going to break that down for you. An official visit is when a college pays, right? They pay for the athlete, some cases the parents, or someone that will qualify to come to the school, and that can include travel, meals, lodging, and entertainment for 48 hours or within a weekend span.
All right, so athletes can start taking official visits their junior year, but they cannot visit while the visit is being taken place and participate in a camp or a clinic at that school. So, for example, if your son has a visit at Florida State University, go Noles. You can't have an official visit at Florida State and participate in their football camp. It doesn't go hand in hand.
So that's a really good example. In Division I, an athlete can take an unlimited amount of official visits. At one point, it was a limit. So it's a beautiful thing. The game is changing so much. So now they can take however many they want at different schools. However, right, because they're always that. However, they are limited to one official visit per school, unless there's a head coach change, right? After that initial visit, in which case they can then go back and revisit, because it's a new staff, it's a new situation, and maybe you need to see what the new outcome or outlook is, right? And so during that time, you want to ask questions. You want to talk to the academic advisor. You want to check out the dorms. You want to observe how players interact with coaches. I always tell parents too, like, you want to talk to the guys that are not playing. Don't just talk to the ones that's starting, talk to the ones that's not playing, because it gives you a different outlook. And understand this, like, make sure you join our Facebook group to get a copy of the questions that you should ask your academic advisors. We see a lot of pitfalls in that area, and we don't really have time to dive in it today. So make sure you join our group so you can get that, okay?
All right. And then I don't want you to confuse official visit with unofficial visits. So unofficial visits is when you cover the cost, but you still get a tour of the facility, the football locker room, and get to talk to coaches. So, for example, a recruiting department staffee or an intern walk you around, give you a brief tour of the facility. So that includes like the coach's office, the weight room, the dorms, the locker room, even the athletic training room. where they get their treatment. And then you will have a meeting with your position coach or a potential position coach about game plan and what's the next steps with you attending that institution.
Yeah, it's kind of like an official visit. It's just not as formal. Like one, you're paying the tab, and then two, you don't get to see sometimes spend as much like protected time because normally on unofficial visits, it's like a whole bunch of other people there too, right? And so officials is a little bit more reduced number, right? Regime where you kind of have it's a little bit more intimate, if that makes sense. But
A little
you can
more intimate, yes, but also too, I look at it as an opportunity for the institution to wine and dine you, to show you the oohs and the ahs of the university and their program.
Yeah. So that brings us into our next segment, which is scholarships, right? Because we're talking about these coins and what who pays for what, right? What does that look like for us, Regine? Like, how is it when we start talking about full versus partial scholarships?
All right, so the difference between the two, and to be honest, not all scholarships are created equal. So let's start off that way. But a full scholarship are for those who are, in the Division 1 FBS. So for those who don't know what FBS is, it's football bowl subdivision programs. And they cover everything. When I say everything, it is tuition, room and board, and books. And sometimes these programs cover food. So that means your son is getting fed 24/7.
Yeah, so like unlike Division 1 FBS programs, which offers the full scholarship opportunities, most Division 1 FCS programs divide their scholarship money amongst players. And a lot of people don't know that, right? And so this means that many players receive partial scholarships that cover only a portion of that tuition, room, and board, right? So it might be Division 1, but that doesn't always mean that it's a full ride. So that means that families still need to cover some expenses in some cases, right? So, they might have to find some extra help through FAFSA grants, NIL opportunities, or even the kids have to have full-time, or part-time, jobs to just help up cost some of this stuff, right? And so the biggest way that we try to explain it to moms is if it's a FBS school, that means it's a full ride or nothing. They offer a full, complete scholarship. If it's a FCS or a Division 2, think of it like a sliced pie. The coach can divide that money up amongst the players. When you start talking about D3 or NAIA, then the focus is more academic plus athletic balance. So it's not really worse. It's just is structured different. So you have to really pay attention to that because we've had kids that go in thinking it's automatically a full scholarship and then can't go to school because they're like, well, how am I going to cover the difference? And then, of course, you have JUCO, which is like a stepping stone that many players go through that to first and then transfer to a D1 later. Anything you want to add about that? Because I don't know if you want to jump into like the different numbers of scholarship offers because a lot of people don't understand that either.
Right. So just to jump in a little bit, so your NCAA Division 1 FBS, those scholarships that are offered are 85 full scholarships. And this is typically, your Power Fives, your big name schools, no partials, and it's very competitive to get these scholarships. Then if you go down, oh, go ahead.
I say, or P4 as they say now.
Oh, P4, yes. So next is your NCAA Division 1 FCS. And these scholarships are 63 total that are covered, and mostly of them are partials. So schools can split scholarships, and some players pay out of pocket or, have that combined aid for themselves. And then next we have NCAA Division 2. So those scholarships that are offered are 36. Again, they're mostly partial, can be stacked with academics and need-based aid. Strong D2 programs can still offer great football. And then anything below there, it's kind of iffy, depends on the program. Like your Division 3, there's no scholarships, none at all. It offers strong academics merit and need-based aid as well, excuse me. But in your NAIA, some programs offer the 24 total scholarships, and that's partial and stackable as well. These are smaller schools, often, your faith-based schools can combine sports and academic scholarships. And then lastly, the JUCOs, the ones who get it out the mud. They have up to 25 total scholarships, and some are full and some are partial. These are 2-year schools. And this is a great opportunity for late bloomers, those who need academic help and developmental skills to go on to the next level.
Okay. Um, and so another thing that like kind of point here is that we don't really hone in a lot of the academics when you have athletes, but if you have a scholar that's a son, like, really trying to get that 30 on the ACT so that he can get an academic and athletic scholarship is really dope too, because now they'll have even more money. But even if something falls or whatever the case may be to the wayside, they can still get their school paid for. So that's always something to consider, and why another reason why academics should be important to you as well.
I agree. But be sure to read the fine print. What exactly does the scholarship cover? And don't be afraid to negotiate. If one school give one offer and mention it to another coach, it might open more doors for you and your athlete.
Yeah, because like don't forget that there are also like additional hidden fees that, and I don't even want to call it hidden, but it's just we don't talk about it a lot. Like travel as a parent, you got to get there. In some cases, if it's not a full scholarship, what does that look like? The cost of getting that child from where they are to the school, gear, laundry money, even food. Just because it's a scholarship, doesn't mean that it covers every single thing. And so this is why you have to teach your sons how to manage money that they are receiving. Because if we had $1 for every time our phone rang, or we have to handle a situation that we got to address a kid getting an eviction notice because he didn't took the money from the scholarship disbursement check, and now he went and brought some stuff he had no business doing, and now they looking at us talk about help. Uh, Regine, I'd be like, help!
There's It's crazy. There's been some times where student athletes have called me, like specifically freaking out about their rent money before, they're going spending on designer, aka Gucci slides, and not budgeting their monies. No, I'm so serious. So it is really, really important, mom, to teach your sons about budgeting skills early, making sure that they're not in these situations like this, because you have to know the difference between a want and a necessity.
Yeah. And again, like we're not even trying to be funny. These are real life situations that every year, I swear to you, like every single year, every semester, it's somebody we calling each other with some crazy exotic story about a kid about to get put out because he didn't spend the money on something else, not understanding how even all of that works. So again, when you're having these meetings with these academic and financial advisors, these are the other questions that you need to have, like how is this money broken down, what money is for what, because I don't think that some athletes understand that, or maybe they do and forget. But we have, as a role, as a parent, you have one and you need to play it, and which brings us into our next segment, which is the role of parents during this recruiting process.
So yeah, this part is for you, mom. It's so easy to get caught up in the hype, but you have to remember, come in close. You have to remember, ultimately, it's their journey. You're just going along for the ride, sis. I love you to death. But again, it's their journey. They're the ones that's going to this institution for 4 years or more.
She's like, look, I'm tired of some of y'all moms. But listen, like we love y'all to death, but seriously, like seriously, support your athlete, like, and guide them through this, but don't put too much pressure. We see a lot of parents, put extra pressures on their children, and some of these guys come tell us secretly that they can't handle that pressure because they don't want to break mom's heart. They don't want to tell mom how they really feel, and so it puts us in these awkward positions that now we have to call mom and sometimes try to have like this very hard, conversation, and it gets scared to be told that ain't your child, right? And so we love these kids, and so it's like, God, what to do, right? And so this journey is about finding the best fit for them, not just the biggest name or school, that you've dreamed of as a mom, or even he dreamed of as a son. Y'all have to make a business decision that's best for him based off of where he is and where he's trying to go. And so at the end of the day, your child is the one who, like Regine was talking about, he has to live there, he got to grow there, he has to thrive there, not you. Because a lot of times we've watched moms do this thing where they make decisions based off of who they are
Right.
and not based off of who their son is. And so you have to know your child and make those decisions or help him make the decisions based off of where he is and where he is going to go. So help them choose a place where they'll be supportive, where they'll be seen, where they'll be successful both on and off the field. And you can understand, right, that this is a complex under like situation. Like we get it, this is hard, like you're letting your child go, and you almost have to take your hands off of them now. And so we have some moms that feel like they some should make the decision alone. Then we meet some moms that feel like they got to make the decision, or as they like to tell us, I'm going to be the one that makes the executive decision, right? But here's the caveat to that: you make the decision, but when you call a school, they don't have to answer you, especially be 18. They ain't talking to you once you get there. You know what I mean? And so it's one of those things where we like, all that sounds good, but if your son don't know how to handle his business, you're gonna be looking crazy, and he gonna be looking crazy, because when you call talking about you need this, ma'am, they're not talking to you no more. He at school, not fact.
Yeah.
And so, from our experience, it's better to write the pros and cons down, right? And help like make that decision together. Or if you do have a son that just don't have the capacity to make that decision, then mom, it's all on you to help him make that decision. And so you have to use and calculate all of those things, because remember, this is the biggest decision that you're going to make in his life. This, like where he goes, it really matters. And I understand that they can hop in the portal and all this other kind of stuff, but they're about to change their rule a little bit too. So it's not going to be all this hopping around, because they're trying to, limit that a little bit. And so while they have these other chances, we've seen that not always work out to its best as well. So where he goes and the impact of it, man, we just see it. It really makes a difference.
Yes. And again, be proactive. Ask about academic support, like tutoring services, housing, and the policy that comes around housing, player development, community service, life after athletics, those graduation rates, and yes, NIL opportunities. So, Mama, write this down. A good question for you to ask a coach is, what kind of support system do you have for your student athletes off the field? Again,
Yes. Yeah.
again, what kind of support system do you have for your student athletes off the field?
Yeah, and like financially too, like start planning that early. Like again, we can't scream this enough. We see so many guys that put themselves in bad situations, or have to get evicted. Now it's on their credit, and all of this stuff. And now they're trying to find somewhere else to live because they mismanage money or mismanage funds. So if you start that early, then you can also help them explore like work study program options on campus, like seeing what type of grants and stuff are out there that's available for him. Keep your eye on those academics so that you can then see what kind of academic scholarships are out there too, right? That's why those good grades really, really matter. And so as we, continue to move through this, we also get a lot of questions, as we call those frequently asked questions from, parents all the time. And we want to start highlighting that so that we can kind of address that, because some questions we're like, man, everybody's starting to ask this question. And so one of the questions that we've been getting like these last few weeks, just like over and over again from moms, is, should my child enroll mid-year or summer for college football? So Regine, what you think about that?
So I really truly believe mid-year is the best time to enroll your student if he is academically eligible to do that. And I say this because during that time, the transition is very short for them to get acclimated. So this individual has to be like mentally strong and able to adjust to change very quickly. But when it comes down to mid-year, this means, again, your child will be coming, right after his high school career ends, which we call it an early enrollee. But this is most common for, students that graduate in December. But I think it's really, really important for them to hone in during this time, because they get to learn the playbook quite early and get transitioned and be able to be evaluated by coaches to get on the field as a true freshman earlier than coming in during the summertime.
Yeah, another little caveat to that would be that they get to adjust to that college life a little bit earlier. And because it's a huge adjustment, right? Especially if you have a child that is not as disciplined, because we've come to learn that some programs are more disciplined than others. And so it's for some kids, it's a easy transition. For others, it's a little bit harder. You have to see how your child is going to transition into that. And then it also gives them opportunity to earn their degree faster, because they're coming in. And so you can think about graduating, because I always try to tell and advise families, like, if you can get a 3-year plan and a 4-year plan, do that for those juniors that may be athletically inclined to go to the NFL, in their junior, after their junior year, then you still have your degree, right? And
Right.
so if not, you can go and work on your master's and still play if you have eligibility. So I just always recommend families to do both, just so that you have a pathway in case you can go to the draft early. And if not, that's okay too. But I just always think that that's good to think about.
Right. Now, I will say the downfall for coming in mid year, sometimes you miss out on those senior traditions, like, prom or any type of, senior class trip that you guys are going on. But if you have a good program, they'll allow you to attend prom and attend your graduation once those dates come up.
And the good point that you said earlier was negotiate. Sometimes, if and that's why having a plan ahead of time is always important, because if you know your child is indefinitely going to be, an early enrollee, then you can start talking to that coach about, like, hey, we want him to be able to come home for prom. We want him to be able to come home for these things, and negotiate that, because
Right.
ultimately it's up to the coach if they'll allow him to go back home for that, right? And so these are the things that you need to know in advance, so that you can have those type of dialogues and conversations early. You might not be able to do everything, but most of the time, from our experience, we've seen coaches allow those kids to go back for their prom in like big major events, because coaches have hearts too at the end of the day, right? And so when you start looking at like the summertime, that June and July, again, like you said, they're kind of, going through all of those kind of things. They're trying to enjoy that and whatnot, and attend like other programs like summer bridges. And some people like, well, I just want to work out and or just build, chemistry and stuff like that, and it's cool. But I always tell people, like, how your parents used to say, you play now, and work harder later, or you can work now and play, later. It's like one of those things. Like, I get that they, in high school, and it sounds all good, but when you start hitting that adult work, as soon as they leave, it's officially adult season, right? And
Yes.
so, it's like when you think back, like, man, listen, if you can do it the right way, I always recommend, if the child, either way, even if they're immature or not, it just gives them a chance, like Regine said, to be acclimated in a way that gives them a competitive advantage, not just athletically, but also academically, because it also gives you a them kind of a notion of what is going to really take for them to manage those class loads as well. Because for some kids, they might have accommodations that may not transition over, or they may have certain things that don't transition over. And so, they might have to get with the academic advisor and adjust these classes. And, it's a lot. So you get that time as a learning curve, because they're not as busy as they would be, but they'll get an idea. So it just gives you some data, right? And I believe in data, that you can look at your child and say, okay, this is how you did. What do you think? What do you feel? All right, we good. And y'all have time to make some adjustments.
Right. And this is not for us to say that the summer is like a downfall or anything like that. It's just, you missed out on some of that spring practice and that have to play catch up of the system. And when I say the system, that goes to like the first thing is the weight room. Like those freshmen that are coming in mid-year are going to be 2 times stronger than the freshman that comes in during the summer. And that's because college weight room training is totally different from high school. So those guys are doing all types of stuff in there. So being able to, get your weight up, but then waking up at certain times, being in study hall, being in college classes, being in position meetings, and how to conduct yourself as a collegiate athlete. So those are some of the things. So, and plus coaches are already evaluating the mid-season guys, the mid-year guys during their spring games.
Yeah. And so, to answer the question that we always get, like, what's best? We always tell parents, it really depends on your child. We always kind of recommend like going in early just from like a business lens. But if we're really heartfelt people, you know, like we are, we're like, it really depends on your child, and you
Right.
only know your child is best, right? And so some are ready to hit the ground running in January, while others, they're like a little bit immature and they need some more months of maturing and rest and reflection and just getting whatever out of their system. So both paths can lead to success. We're not saying if they don't go early that they won't be successful, right? That's not what we're implying here. We're just saying that the preparation and the mindset is very, very key in whether or not they should go in early. But again, we always see it from our lenses that students that went early, they always had an up on the ones that didn't. And it was always harder. Now, if you say, you know what, they're not going to go, but you're going to invest and put him in some hardcore training and get his body together and get him mature and all of that other kind of stuff, then cool. But if that's not the situation, it's just something to consider. Like, you don't want him to be like lazy, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And parents, be a part of that decision. Walk through the pros and cons, like we said earlier. Make sure your child is emotional and academically ready. And always ask the coach how that decision will impact their development and scholarship. So,
Yeah.
woo, child, that was a lot. But we hope it helped and clear some of the fog around recruitment and scholarship.
Yeah, and this is just the beginning, moms. Like, if you have questions, you can DM us on Instagram at the 818 Agency or our personal pages. You can also text us and ask questions at our number that we can answer any questions that you have, 504-800-8512. And yeah, like we're here to answer your questions. Don't forget, again, you can sign up for our classes if you want us to even go more into depth in some of these topics that we love to do. And we really hope to see you next week.
Yes. So until next time, stay strong, stay positive, and remember, we're in this together.
Yes, ma'am. See y'all next week.